Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava
Gopijana Bala Kiribadari. Jana Ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai, Grandchild Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur. So reading from Shri Prabhupada Rita. This is chapter 8 of Let There Be a Temple. In the morning Bhagavatam class, the devotees who lectured regularly discussed the subject as explained in Srila Prabhupada's books. At the time of initiation, Krishna absolves the initiates of all karmic reactions due to past activities. The spiritual master, however, as the representative of Krishna, also shares in removing the disciples' karma. Krishna, being infinite, can never be affected by such karma. Whereas the spiritual master, although completely pure, is finite. The spiritual master, therefore, partially suffers the reactions of his disciples' sins, sometimes becoming ill. Jiva Goswami warns that the spiritual master should not take too many disciples because of danger of accepting an overload of karma. Not only does the spiritual master accept the previous karma of the disciples, but if the disciples commit sins after initiation, then for those also the spiritual master may sometimes become ill. Prabhupada said that his misdeed was accepting so many, misdeed in inverted commas, was accepting so many disciples, but he had no choice for spreading Krishna consciousness. The spiritual master sometimes suffers, he said, so that the disciples may know, due to our sinful activities, our spiritual master is suffering. And this always has a sobering effect on any would-be offender. But now, for the first time, Prabhupada was specifically blaming his disciples for a serious illness. By neglecting their spiritual master's most basic instructions, they were causing him great distress. They understood that their spiritual master was no ordinary malaria victim, and they knew they had to correct their mistakes and pray to Krishna that Prabhupada would get better. Prabhupada's condition was so critical and the implications of his statement so broad that his secretary, Ramananda Swami, thought it best to notify the entire International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Because Prabhupada was pleased by the 24-hour kirtan, Ramananda thought that this program might be introduced in every ISKCON temple in the world. A few telegrams were sent and word quickly spread that every temple should hold continuous kirtan, petitioning Krishna for Prabhupada's recovery. He reminded some of the senior disciples of 1967 when they had stayed up all night chanting and praying for Prabhupada's recovery from an apparent heart attack. At that time, Prabhupada had encouraged them to chant a hymn to Lord Nrsimhadev to pray, "Our Master has not finished his work, please protect him." Due to the sincere prayers of the devotees, Prabhupada had said Krishna had saved his life. Now, in 1974, there are many more devotees than in 1967, and all of them were praying for Prabhupada's recovery. But now also, from what Prabhupada had said, there were also more devotees to misbehave and causing pain. That message, 80% of the leaders of my disciples are not following the rules and regulations, this is why I'm suffering, was not telegraphed. It was too heavy. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. So we've got Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 2, entitled The Activities of Maharaj Agnitra, text 1. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So there's no meter for this one, so I'll just read through the the Sanskrit. Shri Sukha Vacha, Evam Pitali Sampravivrite Tadanushashane Vartamani Mana Agnidra Jambut Vidri Prakasa Prajan Ora Savad Dharma Vikshamana Paryagopayat. Translation, word for word. Please respond. Shri Shuka, Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Vacha said, Evam thus, Pitari when his father, Sampravite took to the path of liberation. Tata Anushasane, according to his order. Vartamana, situated. Agnidra, King Agnidra. Jambudvipa Ukasha, the inhabitants of Jambudvipa. Prajan, citizens. Orasavat, as if they were his sons. Dharma, religious principles. Avekshamana, strictly observing. Paryagopaya, completely protected. Translation. Shukadeva Goswami continued, after his father, Maharaj Priyavrata, departed to follow the path of spiritual life by undergoing austerities, King Agnidra completely obeyed his order. Strictly observing the principles of religion, he gave full protection to the inhabitants of Jambudvipa, as if they were his own begotten sons. Please repeat. Shri Shukadeva Goswami continued. After his father, Maharaj Priyavrata,
After his father, Maharaj Priyavrata,
departed to follow the path of spiritual life by undergoing austerities,
departed to follow the path of spiritual life by undergoing austerities,
King Agnitra
King Agnitra
completely obeyed his order,
completely obeyed his order,
strictly observing the principles of religion.
strictly observing the principles of religion.
He gave full protection to the inhabitants of Jambudvip,
He gave full protection to the inhabitants of Champri,
as if they were his own begotten sons.
as if they were his own begotten sons.
Following the instruction of his father, Maharaj Priyavrata, Maharaj Agnitra ruled the inhabitants of Jambudvip according to religious principles. These principles are exactly contrary to the modern principles of faithlessness. As clearly stated here, the king protected the citizens the way a father protects his begotten children. How he ruled the citizens is also described here. Dharma Vakshamana, strictly according to religious principles. It is the duty of the executive head of state to see that the citizens strictly follow religious principles. The Vedic religious principles begin with Varnashram Dharma, the duties of the 4 Varnas and 4 ashrams. Dharma refers to principles given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The first principle of Dharma or religion is to observe the duties of 4 orders as enjoined by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to people's qualities and activities, society should be divided into Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras, and then again into Brahmacharis, Grihastas, Vanaprasthas, and Sannyasis. These are religious principles, and it is the duty of the head of state to see that the citizens strictly follow them. He should not merely act officially. He should be like a father, who is always a well-wisher of his sons. Such a father strictly observes whether his sons are performing their duties, and sometimes he also punishes them. Just contrary to the principles mentioned here, the presidents and chief executives in the age of Kali are simply tax collectors who do not care whether religious principles are observed. Indeed, the chief executive of this day, the present day, introduced all kinds of sinful activity, especially illicit sex, intoxication, animal killing, and gambling. These sinful activities are now very prominently manifested in India. Although 100 years ago, these 4 principles of sinful life were strictly prohibited in families of India, they have now been introduced into every Indian family. Therefore, they cannot follow religious principles. In contrast to the principles of the kings of old, the modern state is concerned only with the propaganda for levying taxes and is no longer responsible for the spiritual welfare of the citizens. The state is now callous to religious principles. Srimad Bhagavatam predicts that in Kali Yuga, the government will be entrusted with dasi dharma, which means the occupational duty of rogues and thieves. Modern heads of state are rogues and thieves who plunder the citizens instead of giving them protection. rogues and thieves plunder without regard for law, but in this age of Kali, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, the lawmakers themselves plunder the citizens. The next prediction is to be fulfilled, which is already coming to pass, is that because of sinful activities of the citizens and the government, rain will become increasingly scarce. Gradually, there will be complete drought and no production of food grains. People will be reduced to eating flesh and seeds, and many good, spiritually inclined people will have to forsake their homes because they will be too harassed by drought, taxation, and famine. The Krishna consciousness movement is the only hope to save the world from such devastation. It is the most scientific and authorized movement for the actual welfare of the whole human society. And we're going to learn this, Jehovah Jews, Champion, Devi, Champion, Power, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Chaitanya, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. So Prabhupada here is pointing us to the system of government or system of management in human society. So he's saying here how Maharaj Purivrata ruled the inhabitants of Jambudvip according to religious principles. Exactly. So just the way of, like a father protects his begotten children. So King Agnitra, he himself is following the orders to rule and following in his father's footsteps. And at that time, the monarchy was guided by Brahmins. So, the Brahmins would keep them in check so that they could rule properly. So he says here how Varnashram was the system of was enforced so that people would be existing according to their ashram and varna, according to their qualities and activities. In this way, society was divided. So, and the purpose of it was to ensure that religious principles were being maintained. So in this way, the Kshatriyas would govern by protecting the citizens and ruling in this way, to making sure that they were following according to their qualities and activities that were according to their nature. And the purpose of all religion was to bring people back for their spiritual upliftment, to be able to come to a point where they could leave this world altogether and to their reinstated in their constitutional position as an eternal servant, loving servant of the Lord in the spiritual world. So nowadays this knowledge of how to rule and govern is conspicuous by its absence. Prabhupada says now, even now in India, without the India, the kings used to maintain temples and facilitate the worship, like in say Jaipur. I don't know if it's changed any now, but people used to always go to the temple before they go to work, and the deity was the focus, the central focus of the city. But nowadays we see churches empty, so having to close, and people taking the church has become it's been replaced by pubs or the TV screen. And in this way, people are becoming more and more degraded and misled into a more sinful life. So the purpose of good government doesn't seem to be the protection of the citizens, but rather the propagation of sinful activity, and in this way, so that they can tax the population and fill their own pockets. Maybe not every politician is that way, but you see how there used to be Swiss banks where leaders and the wealthy would stock their money anonymously. That's changed now because the government of Switzerland was starting to name the numbered banks, the owners of the numbered banks, and caused a bit of an disturbance. So, but it's only to put their money elsewhere doesn't mean it's stopped. Places like Bermuda and Bahamas and things like this. So it continues, and we see because of this wealth in the hands of sudras who have no who are completely materialistic and see their own sense enjoyment as their major principle. Then they're acting like they're like the modern day Manigriva and what's his name? What's his name? Manigriva and Namakuva. How they were caught enjoying with females and even with the appearance of Narada Muni, they didn't cover themselves. So being intoxicated by intoxication and the association of women. So similarly, nowadays we see so much this, even though slavery is considered a thing of the past, but it's a very much modern day affair, with so many thousands and thousands of people, not only women and children, but men as well, forced into condition where their passport is taken away and they're just manipulated for sense gratification and labour, hard labour. But and still at the same time, governments boast about surveillance, being able to have every corner of the planet covered, but still they're not able to put these people who run this trafficking. They can't put them to task because there's so much money involved. And to see how we live in a business-run world, so money talks, and people can charge all sorts of money as payment in the name of, as Prabhupada says, lawmakers themselves planted into existence, even though they're meant to protect people. Even in like so many people that put citizens, there's so many protests for climate change and so on. But unless there's the businesses themselves are being affected, then you see still plastic bags being used left, right, and centre. But that's only going to be stopped because the retailers themselves are going to get fined, or some kind of levy put on them. So Prabhupada is saying here how also people may even like complain about protest against climate change and so on. But Prabhupada stating here that it's only due to such stock of sinful activities, the stock of reaction of sinful activities becoming so filled up so quickly that it has an effect on the environment with the because of it, he predicts that we're heading for a complete drought, the production of food grains, rain becoming increasingly scarce. So, and only by reducing that stock or purification taking place, then only will that harassment by it be cease. So Prabhupada says the Krishna consciousness movement is the only hope to save the world from devastation. It's the most scientific and authorized movement for the actual welfare of the whole human society. So it said how Prabhupada would save the world in its last hour. So these things are increasingly coming to pass. So much scientists have given so many warnings of how things are. If we come to a certain point, then we won't be able to reverse it. Due to the devotees on the planet becoming Krishna consciousness themselves and spreading Krishna consciousness as much as possible in the form of books, prasadam, and holy name. Then this situation can be reversed. And people's on the path to hell or the hellish situations can be reversed to the spiritual world as their destination.
Yeah.
So any comments or questions, illuminations, corrections?
So in the story, Maharaj Prabhupada, so he was a good leader, and now this confusion over who is actually a good leader, because the media often follow people as good leaders who are not, and then people are saying they're not good leaders. Sometimes it turns out that they are good leaders. So, is that something that we shouldn't be concerned with as devotees, or should we try to give people the knowledge so how they can better discriminate and vote in which qualify for them?
I think well, people have to appreciate what a good leader is first, because they're usually based on, well, first of all, a lot of them don't bother because they think there's no point. But they have to know what a qualified leader is, and also be purified to know, to appreciate that to know the qualities of a good leader. So a good leader isn't involved in illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, and eating meat. That's a basic qualification. And in this way, he can't be bought by anyone. He can stick to his values and like this, and also be in his course that he has to be Krishna conscious. So unless people value a Krishna conscious leader, they're not going to vote for him. Like currently, they want the slaughterhouses open, they want the brothels open, they want the pubs open, they want to be free to illicitly connect with women. So And if one is wants to uphold such principles or becomes recognized, then they'll put pressure on that person. As I say, money talks. So, first of all, our first duty is to make as many people as possible Krishna conscious. But I'm saying how if it's just 1%, then the whole world can become Krishna conscious. So we have to work towards at least that 1% becoming Krishna conscious, and then we can see a change. People will demand, maybe more demand, or see at least have hope in that such a leader can reverse the catastrophe, suicide course that it seems to be on just now.
So, to contrast that, then some people are thinking that this pandemic is actually a chance for some of the good leaders to rectify the situation. That's what they're saying. So, is there any positive signs that things are getting better in society?
Only due to the devotees' influence, like us hearing how the business, stakeholders and so on, they're actually frothing at the mouth with the money that they're going to make from 5G and the vaccine. So, but they only with the influence of Krishna consciousness, because they're saying, and that people can if the populace becomes more kind of demands like it's happening that because of veganism becoming so popular, then the supply suited the demand. So if we can propagate Krishna consciousness, then people demanding to have the higher principles governing the country, and then the supply can support it. Then the supply supports the demand. People who are corrupt can be exposed and be rejected by the common man, rather than just hiding away doing their various business.
I was thinking, if you look at it very holistically, the people themselves are innocent. So if they say Krishna, or they see the chakra on top of the Jagannath cart, or they palm the rope, or they get some prashadam, then they're completely free of all their bad karma. They get so much of the artistic creativity, there's a good chance of in the next birth they'll connect with devotion service. And then the monarch leaders eventually, and then have all their plans, what they want to do. And then in between, are the devotees, are they going to become purified and qualified enough to be able to take the balance, so the pressure is more on us, because the people in general are innocent. But we're in the intermediate stage from acquiring knowledge, because of the knowledge we have responsibility, and then if we don't do it properly, we become offensive. So whereas the person outside with that, in ignorance, he chants Namabads, which is going to give them more benefit than the devotee chanting Namaparad. So the real determining factor in how things are going to go is how long the devotees take up and apply Krishna consciousness. And I think with pure and empowered, and they have such a powerful effect on.
And then be more instrumental in the Sankirtan movement, as I said. And then Krishna can Krishna can reciprocate in most wonderful ways. And there's one thing where even if there's nuclear war and things go to waste and things like that, but Prabhupada said, don't underestimate the power of the demigods. You can change things. So we've got their support.
There's a conversation, well, it's a devotee reflecting on conversation Srila Prabhupada and following Srila Prabhupada. And he was running about Parliament. So the media were asking, well, what's your manifesto, what's your policies? And he was saying, well, we don't specifically have any particular policies and strategies. We're just concentrating on having a good character. So if the leader has good character, then we can, if the leader is trustworthy and his intention is the welfare of the people, then that'll be the kind of governing factor. And we don't need to get too details of doing this policy, that policy, if it's in adherence with trying to benefit society, or the whole society, or animal society.
Well, Brahmins are natural leaders of society, so it's like in the background of so much strife and suffering due to sinful activity, if he stands up and says, I'm not going to be taken away by the opposite sex because I'm celibate. I'm not going to be drunk or be tempted by any types of intoxication because I vow not to indulge in these things. I'm not going to. I pride myself on being very merciful, so I'm not going to eat meat. And I'm not so. I have some integrity that I'm not going to be gamble away my put anyone or anything at risk. It's just a gamble that has to be well thought out and according to my higher principles and so on. Then I'm sure that such a person would be very popular because he can be trusted and self-controlled and peaceful and so on. And these people are looking for leaders like that. So if someone I don't know if he claimed to be God conscious, if that would be very popular, because of the reputation religion has as a whole. Because devotees did start a political party in the 60s, in God We Trust party, and they're propagating that they're following the 4 Reds and so on. And the devotee was able to be an assembly of politicians, and this is what he was saying. Of course, at that time, it wasn't taken very seriously. But the more people are educated as to what a real leader is, then they'll naturally, it'll be so, it's been so obvious, become so obvious, it's obvious that that's what's, they're in a leader. But they haven't been told that before. So, until they're educated, and it's up to the devotees to do so.
Yeah, what's interesting as well, when you mention the devas, because Prabhupada said the devas will just clear up the radiation. If there is that the devas are the ones that would give the power in the first place, so the digging bomb would have the effect. But Prabhupada said that bombs are not as powerful as they think they are also. So and also one of the, I don't know if there's a deva, but this is Kali's age, Kali Yuga. So the real conspiracy theory is that Kali is promoting the 4 activities to take people down into the lower regions of the universe and destroy them. That's what he wants to do. So that's the real. And then Kali may use this person or that person as a puppet or a pawn in his game. But when they actually do conspiracy theories to a particular person, they're not taking into account what's going on in the background. You know, this person's just being used by some other energy, and because in Kali Yuga, anything to do with sex, intoxication, gambling is empowered in this age. It's the general current of energy that's there, and the souls were taken birth in this age are taken birth because they've not been given the opportunity to use those entities before. Now they're being facilitated something they can do. You know? So that's the conspiracy theory.
They've not been, sorry, did that last bit? I didn't follow that.
Well, there's not a lot of meat eating that is sex intoxication and gambling going on in the previous years. Say so. This is facility for those activities to go on also. So that's the real conspiracy there.
Well,
It's actually the most achieved function, and whatever's left over come back trading it, you know, once they're not what they want. By the time you get to Camp U, you've got the bottom of the barrel, you've got the dregs, and they're still here.
yeah.
And then we get a chance to okay, so we'll do some activity. So there's a facility for it.
Well, this also says, you know, it says in Kali Yuga the demigods are queuing up to take birth because then they can get a quick exit out of this back to the spiritual world. But it's also said how the demons are also queuing to take birth because they can perform simple activity quite easily and unobstructed. So it's a battle of getting who gets the living entity first. Is it the demoniac or the demigod, the devotees? So what then Prabhupada said is a war against Maya. And our weapons are Prabhupada's books, Prasadam, and the Holy Name. So more that can be, and it's at how, you know, the sound vibration can travel around the planet 7 times. So the more we do that from even just from here, the pandemic on lockdown, the more we can ourselves take part in that way, then we're doing our bit.
You know, so what's interesting to reflect on is, you know, you may be a demigod and you think, oh, I'll come down in front of you. The problem is, the demigods are used to engaging in sensual application without any reaction. So they come down here and they really want to take up. It's not kind of but they become distracted by their old habits, you see, but they're not accustomed to receiving a reaction with drinking somas and having nefarious activities. So they get distracted by that. So that's another problem. Because they're not innocent, they have some idea that God is there, but they are more interested in enjoying themselves.
Well, that's why the example of Managriva and Anakupra are there, and how necessary it is for the pure devotee to intercede and change their course. And so anyone can be as pure devotee, whatever ashram, so whatever varna they may be. And because it's scientific and authorized, this Krishna consciousness are scientific and authorized, it can have the potency to purify anything. So ourselves and in a united fashion to be able to educate ourselves and practicing it, exemplifying that, then our potency could be so great, can purify, can have such an amazing effect. Krishna being so pleased, then he can step in. If we satisfy the stomach, then everything else is nourished. So if we satisfy Krishna in this way, then he can order the demigods to do anything to rectify any situation. So as one devotee is saying, if we want to know why things aren't getting better in this world, then look in the mirror. So, to see what we can do to improve ourselves, and in this way, things will happen.
And also I was thinking, if they made it that the people that are in leadership don't get paid for it, if that's how the Brahmins couldn't be bribed. In fact, Bhagavad Gita was saying, there's 4 political systems going on simultaneously in Bharashram. The Shudras is communism, they all get the same. The Vaishyas is capitalism to encourage entrepreneurship. The Kshatriyas is monarchy, so they can lead and govern the people. And the Brahmins is anarchy. So the Brahmins don't take any pay. So they're not taxed, and they're held accountable. They just come in and advise the Kshatriyas about how to govern the people. So that's the 4. And then where it's going wrong is we're trying to make it all capitalism, or we're trying to make it all communism, we're trying to make it all monarchy, so the others want to be anarchy. So you can't have that for everybody. There has to be different political systems for different castes. And we can all work together harmoniously. So the Brahmin was poverty stricken. He was averse to opulence, so he was offered some kind of bribe. He didn't know when to say what it was. So he can pretend.
There seems to like the business, some businesses are seeing how it's better to treat the workers with, allow them to give some leeway to excel, to promote the business, and that's not in a way, give their ideas and so on, to capitalize on their resources. And if that was coupled by giving them everything they need, even marriage and so on, then they wouldn't need pay to be satisfied without pay. All the needs taken care of. So let's stop there. Thank you for your questions and attention. And Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Prabhupada ki jai, ISKCON Guruvrinda ki jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi.
The grace Vrinda ki
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,